What's up guys, it's Ryan, and we're back with another video over the recent Engadget article leaked for Final Fantasy VII Remake. If you don't know what happened, I'll leave a link to a previous video of mine down below where I covered it. But here's a quick TLDR for those who don't know. A couple weeks ago, Square Enix sent out a bunch of content creators and journalists to their US offices where they played the first 3 to 4 hours of Final Fantasy VII Remake, though it differs depending on who you ask. Multiple sources had stated the fact that they would be able to give their impressions on Monday, March 2nd. However, Engadget accidentally put out an article early where they went over their time playing it, though it was promptly taken down. And nothing more was known about it aside from previews through the Google search engine. While I wasn't aware of it at the time, Reddit user Hobbs_B had typed out the entire article and laid it out for users on the Final Fantasy VII Remake subreddit at C. So let's go ahead and go over this article in full and I'll give my thoughts. So, let's mosey. They start off with the title, "So far, Final Fantasy VII Remake seems alright." And they go further by stating the following. The Final Fantasy VII Remake could have gone really wrong. There's the weight of the expectation and uncomfortable between console generation launch timing. Square Enix has also changed the core fight mechanics to mostly real-time combat, not the menu-centric take-your-turn battling found in the original. It's probably the biggest of countless changes made to a game that first came out in 1997. And with this, I actually have to agree with the writer here. This is a huge deal for so many people, including myself. Final Fantasy VII Remake is a massive title at the moment, and a lot of pressure does rest on Square to get this right. He goes further by stating, "With little over a month to go, Square Enix offered me the access to several chapters of this remake. I played the first 2, coming straight off the back of the intro movie controlling the protagonist Cloud and later, Barret. Watch my entire Chapter 1 playthrough below." So, we do have full confirmation now that this was indeed a capture event, and the new screenshots I mentioned previously are most likely coming from this writer and not from Square Enix. So, we'll have gameplay of the entirety of Chapter 1 and probably even Chapter 2 fairly soon. We then have, the preview demo then skipped ahead to a later chapter with Brawler Tifa added to the party. I can also access a bunch of new skills, weapons, and spells. To cap it off and presumably offer some fan service to Aerith diehards, I also fought one more boss in the sewers with a party of Cloud, Tifa, and Aerith. Presumably, he means the apps fight which you saw back at TGS. These were all signature points in the early part of the original game, and they gave Square Enix a good chance to show how FF7R changes things up. In case you haven't played the original, this preview is spoiler free. That's a good thing for all the people who don't want to know that Snape kills Dumbledore. To move on from that by saying, so is this Final Fantasy XV but with FF7 characters and lore? The battle mechanics may be similar, but having a lot more time to explore and soak it in, this remake doesn't really feel the same at all. Midgar, the big city where the first game is set, feels a lot more interesting than the rolling landscape of Noxus' often empty world. Once you're outside of battles, there are plenty of characters emoting and elaborating on what's happening in the world, as you run around trying to save it. In fact, nearly everyone in the game had something to say after our team had pulled off our first attack, lingering around rubble and broken bridges, non-playable characters wonder where they go next, mentioning other locations and groups in the FF7R world, like the game's big bad, the Shinra Corporation. This is such a big relief for me. While I do like Final Fantasy XV, the world of, I don't even remember the name, is just kind of meh. It mostly came down to how empty it was, excluding the occasional side quest or area to get a new weapon, but that was it. It was pretty uninteresting overall in my opinion, and I'm happy to see the fact that this most likely is not going to be the same for Remake. The way he describes people running around and going nuts over the first bombing run mission is something that really excites me. Just hearing people talk about what's going on and actually discuss the situation. If they nail it post bombing run 2, then we may have a pretty special world at our disposal here. He moves on then to talk about enemies. Sephiroth, the one with the silver hair and snake eyes, made an appearance early in my demo. As Cloud separates from the team and heads back to base, the mercenary has a vision of Sephiroth, a man who's done some bad stuff to him. More importantly, he's supposed to be dead, but here he is cryptically taunting Cloud, without giving spoilers. Cloud crawls through imaginary burning buildings, giving slow chase to his nemesis. Sephiroth vanishes, just as Cloud draws his sword and attacks. So this is most likely referring back to the scene from the E3 trailer, where we see Cloud swing his sword down at Sephiroth before he disappears, and the fire goes away. I do hope that, at the very least, Sephiroth isn't overblown in this first part. I love his character, but I hope there's still a good bit of mystery surrounding him and that he's just sort of there in the background for the most part, not popping up every 10 minutes or something. Later, there's a flashback to a younger Tifa inside a different reactor than the Midgar ones, standing over someone not long for this world. She hates Shinra. She hates a lot of things. She's also wearing a jaunty cowboy hat, because we were all young ones. Moving forward, we then have, in the PS1 game, these moments were all encapsulated by the inner monologue, Two lines of text that popped up on the screen and teased that Cloud might have some issues. The remake amplifies these important storyline moments, teeing up to what we might see later. One trailer from Square Enix already suggests that your party will come face to face with Sephiroth during the game, which is only the first part of the episodic saga. The writer then points out that, while it didn't happen so soon in the Midgar in the original, they actually really like the plot tease, which is a big relief for me. I was a bit worried it would play a little too heavy-handed and such the mystery would be kind of gone. Thankfully, that so far doesn't seem to be the case. So far, FF7R seems to have a good grasp on the original story, while some fresh themes, namely the Watchmen of Fate and Roche, should help keep veterans interested in a plot they've heard once before. This is pretty great to me. To be fair, it isn't the full game, but I'm happy that the journalist liked what he saw and was happy with the new additions. Let's hope they can keep it up for the full game. The rest of the Avalanche team, who appear in the original game briefly, are also given plenty of screen time in the first chapter. However, there were no opportunities to fight alongside them during my preview. That might have been for the best. Jesse, Wedge, and Biggs pretty much don't shut up. Overall, the dialogue is more polished, but at the same time, it seemed like everyone had to get a line in. It felt like they're verbally jousting in the West Wing as they walk and talk. You just bombed a power plant. Maybe the banter can wait. That aside, the scene setting is good. It may be early days, but the dialogue seems less awkward than Final Fantasy XV. Now, from what I've seen of the bombing run from the leaked demo, I don't really mind Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse's attitude, but my thoughts always could change with more time played. I will say, I do find it somewhat upsetting that you don't actually fight alongside them in some points from what he played, but it's not the end of the world. Plus, maybe they're saving it for later. Moving to the battle system now, we have a lot to talk about here. He points out that Cloud feels a lot more agile, and with the addition of 2 more characters, it gave him a better feel for how the game was likely going to play. Now, I haven't personally played any of the demos, so I can't really give my thoughts on this totally, but I'm happy to hear that he says the gameplay feels even better. He also mentions how he didn't get to try out Classic Mode, but also mentioned how Easy Mode was likely going to be very forgiving as the writers at the event breezed through it. What I want to talk about, what I loved, is how differently each character plays. With Cloud, he's your close combat heavy hitter and feels like other Square Enix action RPG characters like Kingdom Hearts' Sora to Final Fantasy XV's Noctis. Like all the characters, his more complex skills and magic are tied up in the menu and take ATB gauges to use, while your triangle skill, unique to each character, unleashes Cloud's Punisher mode. There are nuances between this and the standard operator mode, but simply put, you'll hit more often and harder as Punisher. If you block melee attacks, Cloud will swing a free counter-strike at the offender in question. Attacks that do hit, including magic, will cancel you out of Punisher mode. He then moves on to Tifa. Tifa has been one of my favorite characters in FF7, and her skills in the remake seemed typically buff-based. One increase to the pressure gauge, which helps stagger enemies, another would increase damage of subsequent attacks. She seemed to hit lighter than Cloud, but also faster. Her attacks connect satisfyingly, but unraveling in her triangle attack, which floats between a mild uppercut and occasionally more powerful Omni Strike, took time. It turns out, a little like her limit break in the original, it's about stacking those aforementioned buffs to maximize damage and get out there before a counter arrives. Finally, we get to Barret and Aerith. Barret, the gun arm guy, is still your ranged attacker for the first few chapters, while Aerith sent out ranged magical attacks during the super boss battle I got to control her for. Yet again, she's your go-to magic user and seems to recover more health throughout her healing spells than the other party members. I like the idea that my party dynamics will actually mean something, through their skills and abilities alone. For fans of the series, it feels more like Final Fantasy VI or Final Fantasy X. Each character has a role to fulfill in battles. Sometimes in RPGs, the character is a blank slate canvas to deck out the best equipment loadouts. That's not the case here. Once again, it seems like the design team for KH2's combat team has created an amazing combat system once again. I love the fact that he mentioned how each character feels unique and different from each other, while all having their own strengths and weaknesses. I'm so goddamn excited to try this combat. In addition to the characters' base skills and strengths, more depth comes from weapons. Use them to master them and be rewarded with a permanent new skill. And tiny materia, which you can see slotted in weapons in the open world. Judging by how later weapons looked in later chapters, how many materia you carry seems to correspond to the weapon, just like in the original. Summon magic, however, is a one per person deal. Summons were often one-shot, powerful spells in the Final Fantasy series, but in FF7R, they're closer to party members, sort of like Final Fantasy XII. Once you fill the ATB gauges and fulfill the necessary conditions, they'll appear in the scene and attack your enemies. You can increase control and damage by using up further ATB gauges on the creature. Summon animations and attacks all look incredible as tradition dictates. We only have a little bit more to go for the article here, and we focused on the music next. On that note, the battle theme is even more thrilling than the original, scaled up to full orchestration. The audio team has elevated the iconic tracks from the original. You'll hear Sephiroth's sinister theme song being touched upon in the intro movie, folded into the game's main theme song. but the soundtrack is blended together in a way that also helps mesh the different tempos in FF7R. Once you win an old battle, the music doesn't haphazardly jerk back to chill walk around the warehouse music. Things are kept tense. It reminds me of how the Metal Gear series would step up or down the tension as you snuck around, got caught, escaped, and hid. I miss the victory theme though, especially after hard-fought battles. While the lack of a victory theme is honestly pretty upsetting, music is one of the biggest things I love about Final Fantasy VII, so hearing the fact that they've gone all out with this music in the remake, and hearing him praise it so much puts a big smile on my face. I need to hear Tifa's theme. That's all. We'll end off here with some negatives, and this gives a bit more context to the negatives from the preview that we mentioned before. To quote, "This preview seemed a little bit too focused though. There wasn't much time to explore the out-of-battle areas or see how side quests might be like. Since the remake was announced, I wondered how the developers would expand Final Fantasy VII's Midgar saga to encompass an entire game. I fear the churn of fetch quests or moment or stages stretched out to kill time. This is also a fear I have personally. There's a glimpse of this during a later chapter, with Cloud, Barret, and Tifa planning to attack another reactor. Shinra has a giant robot countermeasure, foreshadowed as you explore and plant your explosive. On the way out, you have the chance to sabotage the robot before you face it, picking up access cards and hacking terminals in order to cut off the robot from processors and weapon supplies. It's a twist on the original where you pretty much just butt heads with the robot once you get out of the plant. The process itself, though, involves circling upwards, fighting through several floors of the plant, picking up keycards, choosing what to sabotage, and repeating until you got out of the place. It felt long for the sake of being long. The resulting battle with the Airbuster robot did feel slightly higher stakes-wise, and was a struggle despite my earlier attempts at meddling with its parts. While I do wish that Square Enix would show more of the downtime of Remake, I do sort of like what he says here, actually. Though to be fair, it all could matter in execution. Something can sound amazing on paper, but play badly. I'll have to wait and see. To end it, Final Fantasy VII Remake seems to have solved the issue of modernizing the original battle system, but I wonder why Square Enix wasn't willing or perhaps ready to show off the downtime parts of the game. The world of FF7 is a major part of its appeal. So far, all looks the part, but I need to see what happens when Cloud puts away his sword between fights. There it is! There's the full article. I've gone over this throughout this video, but the more I hear of Remake, the more I get excited for it. The positive comments here really nail home why I'm excited for the remake, but the negative ones also equally make me worried. I do hope we'll get more details and actual videos on the downtime of Remake soon enough, since it is a big factor for me. But, with that said, I'm finally done. So, what do you all think? What are your thoughts from what the writer is saying here, and do you share his positives and negatives? Comment below, and let me know. Thank you all very much for watching, have a great night, signing off. Peace out, soldiers.